Welcome to the Divine Mess, a sanctuary where the dance of the empowered masculine and the divine feminine unfolds in all its glory. Join us as we delve into the heart of these cosmic energies, exploring their attributes and the profound impact they have on our lives. From the raw power of the masculine to the nurturing embrace of the feminine, we uncover the balance that leads to a life of abundance and joy. Our hosts, Curdy Deva Perriman and Tina Ryan, are your guides on this spiritual journey who blend science with soul to offer practical wisdom for harnessing your divine energy. We celebrate the beauty and imperfection, embracing the chaos of life's journey as a catalyst for growth. The Divine Mess isn't just a podcast, it's a movement towards wholeness and self-expression. So come laugh with us, cry with us, and grow with us. Every episode is an invitation to explore the depths of your being and to live out loud, authentically and unapologetically. Subscribe and join our community of seekers as we support each other in this extraordinary, messy adventure we call life. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're joining us. Welcome to the 60th episode of The Divine Mess. It still blows our mind every single time now that we have well and truly climbed into double digits and have been having the best fun time for the last 12 months. If this is your first time joining us on the virtual couch, my name's Tina Marie and I am a self-love coach, and I help women moving through separation and divorce and help them realize that they are not their labels and that they have permission to do whatever it is that they feel that they want to do. So we help them navigate through all the ups and downs that come through that challenging time. And as always, I am joined by my gorgeous co-host, the cosmic alchemist, Mr. Curdy David Perryman. He is always a pleasure to have divine conversations with. And I will let him introduce himself and he can explain a little bit more about cosmic alchemy. Just 2 seconds worth, just a little bit for those dulcet French tones. That's all we want to hear.
Thank you, Tina. So welcome to our listeners. As always, it's a pleasure to have you back, and those who are listening for the first time, welcome. And for our 60th episode, we do have a guest, but before that, I'm just briefly introducing myself. Like Tina said, I'm a cosmic alchemist, which means that I help people to transmute their low vibe energy into high vibe and have fun with life and not just complain about it and say, oh, what's wrong with me? But it's actually what's good for me. And this is where I'm taking you on a journey, on the hero's journey to your golden temple, which is like that safe place where you feel loved, protected, and safe. And I will leave Tina to present our guest in French. She challenged herself today and she said she's going to do it in French.
You must have had a few too many gin and tonics before we got started, my friend, because that is just not happening today. Perhaps in another 12 months, yes, but just not today. We would love to welcome the beautiful Camilla Arnold, who is an internationally best-selling author, writing coach, and creative wellbeing mentor. She's published a range of books, and she also is a writing coach, so she helps other budding authors find their authentic voices. And Dava and I have both been in that position where we have had the opportunity to be part of a co-authored book. So we're going to love diving in and having a chat with Camilla and learning a little bit more about her, because that was the briefest of briefest bios, because I think it's always better when it comes straight from the person that we are spending time with on the virtual couch. So welcome, Camilla. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So give us a little bit of a background as to how you got started, and then we'll just see where the energy takes us from there.
Well, I will try and keep this short. It's always one of those kind of long, winding stories. The universe takes us wherever it takes us, right? Because I wanted to be a writer when I was a child. I used to write poetry and stories. had a relative make a comment about a story that I'd handed to them that made me feel less than good enough, and it really shut down my ability to write. I felt like I didn't have anything worth saying. But I still loved stories, still wanted to be around them, and it led me on a path of design and working with designing books. So I went to university, did my Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts, started working as a freelance book designer for like small independent publishers, that kind of thing. Learned a lot about indie publishing. Then university, you know, took me on a different path for a couple of years to gain other skills. I went to go be a wedding photographer. I had too many rubbish experiences being a freelance graphic designer, and thought, you know what, had enough. Don't want to know about books anymore. Don't want to do anything to do with them. I'll go do my other love, which is photography. Tried to be a wedding photographer, and this was in my 20s, where I was really struggling to find myself. I'd struggled with depression through most of my late teens and early 20s, to the point of feeling suicidal at some point. Had a lot of anxiety, and what happened, I think the universe wanted me to go out there, be a wedding photographer for a little while, get some really good people skills, but then that's not where I was meant to be. So universe shifts you again. I had a panic attack at a wedding. I was halfway through the day, all on my own, 2 hours away from home, in a field, no phone signal, nothing, and I had a panic attack. Didn't even know what was happening to me at first, and I thought, I can't do this. This isn't fair on me, not fair on the couples. So I cried all the drive home, and I thought, I can't do it anymore, and I wound down the business. Didn't take on anymore, just did my bookings, and that was it. Went back to graphic design and thought, what do I do now? I'm stuck, don't have skills that would take me into, or don't have the experience that would take me back into 9 to 5, because I've been freelance so long. So I started working with a lot of spiritual, holistic entrepreneurs, doing like social media graphics and things. And I thought, I'd always been kind of spiritual, always interested in it. And so hoping by osmosis of working with them, doing their social media graphics, I might pick up some stuff that would help me, because my anxiety and panic attacks were just getting out of control at that point. And one of the people I was working with came to me and said, oh, I'm writing a book. What do you know about writing a book or publishing a book? And it's like, well, actually, this is what I used to do for a living, so I can help you. Conversation grew and grew and grew. And from, can you help me design my book, it became, can you publish my book for me? And I found myself setting up my own publishing company without really knowing much of anything, but knowing enough. I was like, I think I know enough to get by. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That was back in late 2019. And what happened is, it was mainly sort of author services, designing books, you know, for spiritual, holistic entrepreneurs. What happened was, they came to me and they kept saying, I really want to work with you, but I'm still writing and I'm stuck. Can you help me? And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know how to write anything. I've got my own hang-ups about being a writer. What can I do? And they're like, please just help me. And so I thought, I might not be able to write, but I can learn how to coach writers. So I went and got an ILM qualification with the intention of being a writing coach. And that was in 2021, January, I started my coaching qualification. And I was also at this point working with a holistic practitioner. She had lots of various tools. So I was starting to work on my emotional baggage, learning things like EFT, and beginning to empty the emotional stress bucket. So what happened was, halfway through, I thought, I've got these holistic tools, I've got coaching skills now, maybe I can help myself with this whole thing about writing. And I started to, you know, really dig in, what's underneath here? Why don't I feel like I've got anything to say? And all of a sudden, I was back in this moment where I was 8 years old. This relative was saying this comment to me, and it felt like a gut punch. It was so raw. I just thought, oh my God, I felt sick. I felt hot. felt like I couldn't breathe. And I thought, I can't let anyone else feel like this. This isn't fair to feel like you have nothing to say. So I obviously worked through my own wound, found myself writing poetry for the first time in 25 years, and became really passionate about helping other people share their voice authentically, but not just writers, just any creative expression, you know, whether that was painting or design work or whatever it was. It kind of opened it up from just sharing the words to actually sharing your soul through whichever medium really speaks to you. And because I've sort of been on this spiritual journey, I thought to myself, people need to know that it's possible, because I'd gone through, like I said, depression, panic attacks, anxiety, come out the other side, you know, by late 2022, I was a completely different me. And I thought, people really need to know that this is possible, because I thought I was too broken to be fixed at all, ever. And I'd spoken to my holistic practitioner and thought, oh, maybe it's like her story, you know, share it from a practitioner's point of view. And then I thought, what it actually needs to be is from the lay person, the person who has no tools, who doesn't know that any kind of emotional, spiritual healing is possible. So I just thought, all right, then I'll write it. Why not? And I just turned up to the desk, and this book poured out of me. 40 days, 81,000 words. I could not stop. It was just like the whole journey of how I'd, you know, been really fearful at the beginning and doubtful that it was even possible, and all the tools I was using, working with like divine feminine, all of these things that was just pouring out of me. Goddesses were coming to me like in my sleep and in meditation saying, you know, I have stuff to share, and I was just letting it flow through me. It was just the most incredible experience, and it really made me realize that it's, when I'm coaching people for writing, it's not about this is how you write a good book. It's more about helping them with all of the wounds that are holding them back. It's that emotional healing on a really larger scale. So I've really opened out writing coaching, creative coaching. It's got that, like I said, like you said in my bio, that kind of well-being aspect to it. So it's brought my experience into the creative side to really support like a holistic journey. So that's pretty much what I do now. I've obviously got this book out into the world, and we kind of take people on that journey, you know, to help them, whether that's like individuals, corporate, but just supporting the emotional, spiritual side that doesn't always, you don't know where to start. It's like a minefield when you've got all these emotional wounds. So that's pretty much my winding journey of how I got here.
Thank you so very much for explaining just the surface of the journey. I'm guessing that it's just
I try and condense it down, but it's still a long story.
Touching the important highlights. I guess it's the highlight reel of how and why you got started. What else? So you're obviously working with holistic and spiritual practitioners. Did you find that you ended up magnetizing those people to yourself, or was it just these are the people that I want to work with, or did they just universally land in your lap?
I think it was a bit of all of those things. I was clearly on a journey myself, really just needed help. I remember sitting in the bath one night crying, and I just looked up at the universe and I was like, if there's someone out there, if there's anyone listening, I need help. I don't know what help. I don't know who could help me, but something has to change. Please help me. And the next day I felt a little bit better. And then I found, I think it was just like on a little Facebook ad or something, there was a sort of spiritual group. And I thought, why not? I don't know anything, but I'm just going to put myself in that orbit. Started to learn a few things. And from there, it was like, I magnetized these people. One person came to me, they found out I had design skills, and they said, can you help me like do some social media graphics? And then their friend is like, oh, your graphics look great. Who did that? So they referred them to me, and it just sort of snowballed. And I found that I really enjoy working with not just creative people, but spiritual, holistic people as well. We're on the same wavelength. So it became that initially I sort of magnetized them to me, but now I intentionally say these are the people I want to work with because they align with me and my values.
And Camilla, like based on your story, we can feel that you have tapping into the divine feminine to really accept yourself in terms of your healing. And I know your book speak about the divine feminine as well, but you did mention about the goddesses coming to you. Like, could you share a bit like how did they help you? Because you mentioned a lot about your anxiety, your depression, your like bouts of crying, like, and how it was
wasn't
for
good.
you that that journey. And
Yeah.
I love how you can speak openly about that, because we have been speaking recently about spiritual awakening, and I feel for you that has been the journey from the wedding photographer, like to the social media graphic, and then to become truly who you are, the creative, and that's fully tapping into the feminine energy. So can you share a bit more about that divine feminine energy that's speaking through you?
Yeah, definitely. So I've always been fairly interested in the spiritual. Even as a child, my granddad was my person, and he was always encouraging me to explore. He was the person who came to me one day and he said, can you do healing? And I'm like, this tall, and I'm like, what does that mean? And what is healing? And he said, oh, well, you put your hands like this, and I just tried it. So I've had bouts through my life where I've been kind of openly trying to explore spiritual gifts and then shut them down. But what happened is I met this spiritual practitioner, I think it was March 2020, right at the beginning of lockdown. I got involved with this group of holistic entrepreneurs. They were going to do a summit online about, how we can, it was a time of real fear and people wanted a different way forward. And it was like these holistic entrepreneurs, practitioners can show us a new way to navigate life, our feelings, etc. And I was sort of helping with the graphics and design work and all that sort of stuff. And I met this one holistic practitioner who's walked me through my emotional journey. She's later become my business partner, but she worked with Lilith, and her summit talk was about Lilith. And I'm like, I don't know anything about Lilith, never heard of this character before. Like, tell me all the things. I went to her talk completely like enraptured. It was just captivating. And she basically was explaining Lilith comes to you right at the beginning of that emotional healing and creative journey. She's really there to help you step into your power, claim your voice. And she basically, this holistic practitioner said, come to my first workshop. And she's talking about 5-element metaphors, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm too polite to say no. I'm just gonna turn up. And then she's like, why don't you just come to a balance? I can help you. And Lilith started to turn up in like meditation, and we started to talk about how I can work with her energy. What does it mean to me to step into my power? So there was a real, at the beginning of my emotional healing, it was kind of like self-identity. Who am I when I'm not listening to everyone else, when I'm not weighed down by society's expectations, really peeling back all of those things that are placed on us as we grow up. So working with Lilith was kind of like blew the lid off everything, and it felt really raw, really primal. And from there I started to work with other different divine feminine icons and archetypes. Carly, I did a bit of work with her in terms of like anger and rage, because once you start to blow the lid on how you feel and all the things that have been done that were wrong to you and all the times you were silenced, you're really, really angry. And that was where I was wanting to express it and didn't know how to. So the writing started to come in, because how do I get this out of my body? I mean, I was doing other like somatic tools, EFT, etc., to try and move it through as well. But for me, the writing really did help to get it out there, out of my face. out of my body. And then in my book, I also talk about because basically what I did is I realized that my healing journey, it was kind of in 3 stages. So there was like this exhumation phase where characters like Lilith and Kali are helping you really dig up all of the deep buried stuff and all of those dark feelings, hard feelings, things we don't want to look at. But then once you move through that, you're in like a healing phase where you've started to heal some stuff, and some days you feel like you've really got it together and it's going really well, and then the next day you're triggered and things aren't going so well, and you feel like, oh my god, have I done any work at all? I feel like I'm back at the beginning. Why did I start this thing? And I was really trying to show people with my book that this is what it's like. It's not all love and light, and it's not an easy journey, and sometimes it's really, really ugly. And what I had in this kind of healing phase is I started working with the 4 phases of the feminine. So like there's this concept of the triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, and crone. And I discovered that between the mother and the crone, there's also a phase called Maga. It's not always too well known, but it's kind of like a missing phase of life. We don't talk about it very much. It's when your children have grown up, they don't need you as much, but you're also not quite in that crone state yet. So I started working with different goddesses. So like for the maiden, Persephone came forward. The mother had Demeter. The crone was Hecate. And because Maga is like a not very well known phase, I decided to go look into who do I think could be an icon for this era that we could tap into, because that's the thing for me with these divine feminine icons. It's about connecting with their story, their energy, what wisdom are they trying to tell you, and we can do that through the goddesses and all of their stories. So I discovered a Greek goddess called Tethys, who had lots and lots of children, but she never really had a story of her own, which I felt reflected the energy of Maga, and hopefully people will be able to start writing a story for Maga going forward. But in going past healing, when you're sort of got it more together, doesn't mean you're never triggered, because we still we've always got layers of healing coming through. Some things will just throw you off, but you've got it more together and you feel like, I know who I am, I'm more stable in my sense of identity, my purpose, and what I want to build for the rest of my life. And I called that the reclamation phase. And I started to work with Mary Magdalene and Kuan Yin, because it's more gentle, it's more coming home to yourself, it's got that kind of unconditional love vibe. So it's been a really interesting journey. I mean, there are plenty more goddesses to work with, but they are sort of the core ones that I've really connected with. And it's just been, it was one of those things I never really thought I would do. Like, I love the idea of the gods and the goddesses, always been interested in mythology and all of those stories, but didn't quite know how it related to me until suddenly I'm like going into meditations and I'm seeing a goddess standing in front of me and she's giving me some wisdom, or I'm sort of tapping into, okay, this is how I feel today, what would Lilith do? And it was just those little moments where you think to yourself, this is how we bring those ancient stories into our modern day and work with them. So that's been really enlightening for me to find how we can bring divine feminine just into every day, because it's such a different world with all of our technology, and we're isolated, disconnected from ourselves and other people. It's really opened things up for me.
It's interesting when you're talking about that 3rd phase, because it's where I find myself, because I've got 4 teenage boys, and in that space of they sort of need you, but they sort of don't need you. And it's just been this really interesting self-discovery, I guess, in terms of going, well, who am I without the mother label across the top of my head? What do I want to indulge in? And and re-establishing different boundaries and all of those sorts of things as the children get
Yeah.
older, you're not as prepared to dump your own needs
Yeah,
in
that's
favour of
exactly the
theirs.
story of Magga.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
you're refinding your voice, I think, is probably a really good term for it, in terms of going, have I, and David and I only spoke about it this morning, is have I been of service to myself first,
Yes,
so that then I
absolutely.
can be of service to someone else,
Mhm.
and just really concentrating and honing in on that, so that you can walk into that next phase
Yes.
feeling really good about it, because we go through motherhood completely doubting every single step, comment we make, you name it, asking, have
Yeah.
we completely screwed our children up?
Yeah.
We ask all of these, you know, crazy questions, but it's not until you're really in this sort of spiritual movement, or, you know, spiritual journey, that you realize it doesn't matter what you do, you can't muck it up, because it is their journey to experience it as it's unfolding. And you're doing the best that you can with the level of information you have on any given day. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's very interesting when you start to move into that different phase, and then actually having conversations with your kids and going, you're now in this stage of life. That means we need to have a different relationship. It can't be the relationship of when you were 5 or when you were 10. You know, you're now 15, 16. So, you know, we need to re-look at it again.
Yes.
And in terms of, you know, within the next sort of 3 to 4 years, we're going to need to re-look at it again, because they're moving into the next phase of their lives.
Yes.
So I love the fact that, you know, because I've got my goddess books behind me on my shelf, and I'm like, oh, I haven't visited those for a little while. And we
Maybe
say
it's
with
time.
with every podcast, there's one of these universal big reminders to go,
Yes.
smarten up your act, get back into the swing of things.
A little sign just drops in there.
Yeah. We've really honestly had those over the last 25 episodes, where we've been having people come to the couch and have conversations with us, that there has never been one where neither of us have walked away and gone, yeah, didn't get much from that. We walk away sometimes going, did you feel like you got hit by a truck? I feel like I got hit by a truck. And sometimes
that
it's
feeling well.
light, and you know, it's light and it's airy and it's fun. And other times it's like, oh, yeah, there's a bit for me to unpack and to have a look at.
But isn't that the great thing of doing this, that
Oh,
we can go and we can have these conversations? Because obviously having these spiritual conversations isn't widespread. I know it's gathering pace, but to have these kind of conversations, I find it really energizing, but also it's just really nice to be so open about the whole journey and say, you know what, some weird stuff has happened, but it's okay. And then to go away from it and feel like, that's given me food for thought, or maybe I got a bit triggered by something, but you don't feel like you're in a hole afterwards. I don't. When I come away from these things, I'm always like, oh, I'm able to reframe it and think, I've got some work to do there. We've peeled back another layer of this onion and found the next wound that I need to do something with. And it's really empowering to have been on that journey and feel like I can do something with it now. I'm not going to go be in a hole all day just because you said something that made me feel a little bit, oh, that was weird. Or, you know, you go through life and something happens. And this is what I try and do with the book, give people the confidence, the courage to face the fears, because you know what? Yeah, it's hard. And you kind of wish you hadn't even started sometimes. And you think, what have I done? Am I ever getting through this? But it's so worth it on the other side, because then life doesn't happen to you and you don't feel like things are being thrown at you. It's like, actually, I can handle this. I mean, I
Mhm.
sit there and I think about, the me from 10 years ago and how hurt and wounded and terrified she was of just life, the universe and everything. And she wouldn't have even dared come on a podcast like this and talk about this stuff. That would have been way too many steps too far for her. But actually, it's so important to come on here and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and say, you know what, we can get through it. And with like these 4 phases of the feminine, I mean, I'm obviously not at a certain age ranges yet, which I was writing about them and letting these goddesses come through me and share their wisdom. But it was the opportunity to sit there and say, well, what wisdom can I get from the crone? What has she learned that I could apply to my life where I am right now? What have I been through as the maiden that I can take through into that next phase of life? And it's about just opening yourself up and saying, I can find wisdom anywhere. It doesn't have to be a trigger. I can frame it as an activation instead. And just reframing it into it's not a trigger, it's an activation, really gives me room to grow and just not like fall into a hole over something that happens to me. It's been really, really enlightening.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because for every situation we go through, like when your relative spoke to you about your writing, we associate either a good connotation or a bad connotation
Yes.
to it. But it's not until you reflect back on it, obviously, sometime later, that you see that, yes, there were some elements in it that weren't nice. However, there was something else in it for you, but it's about having that ability to see the duality. It's only us as humans that allocate good or bad, or, happy or sad, or whatever it is, but understanding that both exist at the same time, and it's understanding the balance, that masculine and feminine energy balance. It's just the balance in life. Can't have the light without the dark. It can't all be sunshine and roses and, swinging along and having a great time. There has to be some element of weight and trial and moving through things in order for us to evolve and grow. And like you say, peel that next layer back to redefine our purpose, because I think with every layer that we peel back, we get to redefine our purpose, and it becomes more honed. It's like those beautiful river rocks that look all jagged, and the minute that you start to polish them up, you get to see their detail clearer and clearer and clearer as you go along. But it's not until you get knocked around or beaten about or had people say extraordinarily unkind things for you to realize that you're made of sterner stuff.
Yes.
Well,
pressure makes diamonds, right?
Beautiful.
That's how I try and look at it.
Well, 1,000%. But my lovely co-host is sitting there giggling and laughing, but he's not actually saying anything. So I'm going to hand the floor over to him because I'm sure he's got questions.
I'm just embracing the divine feminine energy. That's what I'm doing. Don't just
it's very present today.
Yeah, so it's just about receiving, right? For the divine feminine, it's not just like action. So I get to sit back, which is great. But actually, thank you, Tina, like for this space, and Camilla as well for what you shared. That's a beautiful journey of resilience and how it shows how much you have grown. But I'm curious to know, like, by working with the goddesses, with the divine feminine energy, what have you learned about you until this point?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I don't want it to be cliche, but sometimes it does sound cliche because it is true. I realized that I am made of so much stronger stuff than I thought. Back in my 20s, I really did think there's no fixing me, there's no hope for me. I've got all of this stress and all of this worry and all of this emotional pain that I don't know what to do with, and I can't see it ever changing. And I really, really believed that. But actually, what it taught me was how powerful hope is. I write about hope a lot in my book as well, because hope, it can feel so tiny, so so fleeting, but actually it's the thing that keeps us hanging on for that better moment, for that change. And for me, I was at rock bottom and just so desperate for any change that when this holistic practitioner came to me and she offered me, you know, walk with Lilith, she will take you somewhere new. And it was just that tiny like flicker of hope in me, you know, I could feel it in my chest. And I was thinking, I've got nothing to lose. I might as well go along the journey. And it's really opened me up to just how magical we are. You know, I've learned so much about myself. I really can identify my strengths now, which I could never do before, and say, you know what, I'm a strong person, I've got these talents, and I'm able to really embrace who I am and see the value in myself. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned on the whole journey. It's my self-worth. Because you know what, society will do its damnedest to make you feel like you're nothing, but holding on to cultivating that sense of, you know what, I am worthy, I have something worth sharing with the world. Okay, it might not be every single person on the planet who resonates with what I have to say, but there's going to be people out there who need to hear it, who resonate with it, who are going to get something from it. So it's worth me saying it, even if it was just one person in the world that I helped, it was worth doing. And that has been the biggest learning for me from the Divine Feminine. It's like, actually, it's okay for us to be soft. It's okay for us to feel things. You know, society will try and beat it out of you that you're not supposed to feel anything. Even some of the spiritual world, it's like there's this kind of idea that once you've done all your healing, you become like a Zen master and you're enlightened and don't feel anything. Nothing triggers you. And actually, what I've learned is, no, you feel everything, but you can handle it when you feel it, and it's okay to feel it. And it's also okay. The Divine Feminine has taught me that it's really okay to express how we feel, especially the anger. Working with Carly was really, really enlightening, because as women, we're meant to be perfect and pretty and quiet and, you know, accept everything. But actually, yeah, we have anger in us, and sometimes it's totally acceptable to feel that anger for things that have happened to us, or how the world treats us, or the attitudes of other people, boundaries being crossed. And that's a really important thing to know, that your boundary has been crossed and you need to do something about it. Reconnecting myself to my body has been really helpful. And that's something that I've learned from the Divine Feminine, of what does it feel like when it feels like a yes in my body? What does a no feel like? What does it feel like when someone's made me feel small or uncomfortable? Just knowing what feelings feel like in a world that's told us not to feel. That's been a lesson that I continue to learn from all of the Divine Feminine icons that come to me. They've always got some new aspect of that to teach me, which is really amazing.
I think we're all in such a rush most of the time to not feel anything. And when we do feel something, because we haven't been given permission to, and we don't know how to handle it, then we go running looking for band-aids so that the feelings aren't as overwhelming. So whether you know, go and utilize Western medicine, or whether you use crutches, drugs, alcohol, whatever flavor it happens to be, it doesn't stop it. The only way to stop it is to go through it, you know, to sit in it, and to
100%.
sit in your muck, and to feel because the thing is, if you do it and you recognize it and you meet it head on, it actually takes less time than trying to drive right the way around the outside edge of it.
Trying to numb yourself from it,
poke
pretend
it,
it's not there.
I'll look at it and go, oh, I'm not really sure I want to look at that. But I've found over the course of my journey, being married and then being divorced, and being in spaces where it's similar to you, didn't feel that the voice mattered and what I had to say was important. And for so long, you just shove it all down and be that, yes, no problem, I can take care of that, that sort
People
of
pleasing, yeah.
that person. And then, like you say, when you kind of step on the other side of the path and you go, oh, I really want to hit something. I'm really, really angry and I really, really don't like their behavior. And it's a new experience, to feel all of that rage and, like in your head, having visions of doing all sorts of wicked and wonderful things to calm that inner rage. But for me, it was a bit of a punching bag sometimes. The pillow on the bed was quite handy.
Scream
At
into a
times,
pillow, yeah.
screaming into a pillow or literally pummeling it, and imagining people's faces on it. And I'm quite sure that most people would hear that and go, I wouldn't recognise that about her. And I'm like, well, we all have to go through our stages of grief, no matter
Absolutely
what we're grieving over, whether it's a past version of ourselves or relationships or where we thought we'd be in our lives and we didn't get there or we got deviated or whatever happens. But sitting in it, it's the one thing I try and teach my kids. Don't try and avoid it. Sit in it, feel it. It's gone a lot faster than you think it's going to be. And then you're not trying to put band-aids over things that the universe wants you to feel, because it wants you to, it's like a muscle. They want you to exercise. It's like going to the gym. You have to put some time and effort into it so that the purpose comes out the other side.
I always think that it's, we didn't come here as humans to be perfect. And, if we wanted to just feel happy and amazing all the time, then you'd stay in that universal consciousness where it is just omniscient and omnipresent, etc. We're here as humans to be messy, to feel everything, to make mistakes, to get it wrong, to get up and try again. Like, it's not meant to be perfect. Like, your show Divine Mess, it is meant to be a mess because that's what it is to be human. And trying to transcend the humanity takes the humanity out of it. Suddenly you're less of a corporeal being, and it's just not what we're here to do, in my opinion. I'm always like, we want to be real, we want to be raw. That's how can we be more real and raw and authentic and feel all the feelings? Because as you say, life, the universe and everything, the world will try and tell you that you're not supposed to feel, and we'll do all of those things to stop ourselves from feeling. But there's a real beauty in those emotions, even the bad ones. There's still something you can learn from it, and it will still make you a better person coming out the other side of it. Because that's the thing for me, it's about not sitting in it. There will be days where you feel like you can't get out of bed because you're just weighed down by the grief or the fear, or you're paralyzed in it. But it's knowing that we don't stay there. Like, we're transient. Time keeps moving, we keep moving, everything will continue to change. Those feelings can change as well, and when you come out the other side, you've learned something, you've grown as a person. Remembering and learning that for the first time really made a difference to me, just changing who I was, and then realizing that not everyone knows this stuff. People go through life thinking, oh, I feel really stressed or unhappy, my life is terrible, I'm always going to feel this way. So this is where I've become really passionate about helping other people realize, you know what, you don't have to. You can channel it through your art, your words. You can make small changes to your life, and they all add up. At first, it feels really incremental, like, am I making a difference? Is anything ever going to change? But when you change like that 1% every single day, over time, that adds up. And suddenly you look back in a few months' time, years' time, you think, oh, wow, look how far I've come. And that's a really powerful moment to have that reflection and think, wow, I've done it. Something has really shifted here. And it wasn't like an overnight, I've had to overhaul my life, I've had to move across the world, I've had to throw out all my clothes, all of that kind of stuff, walk away from everyone I love. Sometimes the change can be really incremental, feels really slow, but it doesn't make it any less worthy, and it doesn't make it any less life-changing. It's just the time it takes to do.
And if you had to point people in the right direction as to possibly where to start those, what was your first toe dip into your incremental change? What did that look like for you? Because we always love to give people some practical, hands-on, no matter where they are in their spiritual journey, because everybody needs a gentle reminder, as we always get. What would you suggest for people to go, I'm never going to change my life? Where would you start?
So for me, it really was incremental. The first thing that my holistic practitioner taught me was emotional stress release as a technique. And it literally, if you don't know what it is, you just put your fingers, if you're in a state of stress, you know, something's happened and you really panic, you literally just put your fingers very, very lightly on your forehead, just above your eyebrows, and just let yourself think of all the stress, whatever is going on for you in that moment, and just let it run and run and run. And it helps to dissipate. Obviously, she knows a lot better all the ins and outs and wheres and whys of how it works. But for me, I found it worked. So I was finding, because what you do see people do it when they're stressed, they just do this, or they'll put their head in their hands and they don't realize that they're doing it. But what they're actually doing is they're trying to touch these emotional stress points. So that was my first tool. I had nothing else. I mean, eventually I learned things like tapping, which was amazing. And I've become a EFT practitioner myself because I love it so much. But right at the very beginning, it's like, what do you do when you feel that bad? You hold your points, and when you feel a bit calmer, go write about it, like free write. That was what my main thing was. So whether it was a poem I was writing or just literally just pages and pages of this is how I feel, just get it out of myself and onto paper, just kind of gave a little bit of distance from it. And then I was able to, you know, come back to it the next day, look at it again, and, well, what can I do about this? Is there anything in all of this stress that I've written about that I could possibly change? Could I go have a conversation with that person and say, this made me feel really uncomfortable, can we do things differently? Or could I say no next time when that situation arises? Just those really tiny little changes that you can make, where you kind of take stock of what are the things that give me stress and why do they give me stress, and then what wouldn't give me stress? How could I respond differently that would make me feel less stressed? Is it that I need to place a boundary there and say no, or not spend time with those people? Things like that. They sound really silly, but they were the first things that I could do, the only things I could do to begin with, because I just didn't have all of these life-changing tools. I had so much stress in my bucket, it was overflowing. I liken it to being in a boat full of water, and I literally had a teaspoon and I'm bailing myself out, because that's how it feels at first. So it really was about just starting small and just trying to, like you said, go pummel a pillow for a little while and just get some of that energy out of you until you're calmer to look at it. Because going and having the argument with someone is not going to help. But if I can just get this stress out of me, I can then look at it a little bit more clearly and think, okay, what could I do instead? How could I change this? What am I really unhappy with? And then, like I said, make those incremental steps. I mean, Lilith, she was my first goddess I really worked with. She brings a lot of self-identity to the table. So I was looking at, like, what am I doing in my job? Do I even like what I'm doing? How do I express myself, as in even the clothes I wear, how I do my hair and my makeup? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I don't like anything in my wardrobe, none of it. Excuse me, my voice is going a little bit. None of it feels like me. but I can't throw out my entire wardrobe and start again because I don't have the cash for that. So what could I do? So it sounds really silly, but I went on Pinterest and I'm pinning what feels like who I am now, rather than these clothes that I've had for a decade that definitely aren't me and they don't feel like my self-expression. Go on Pinterest, start to feel into what feels like me and who I want to be, and then go get one piece of clothing that really does feel like me and throw one thing out. Or in terms of like my job, I was obviously starting to work with a lot of holistic entrepreneurs doing social media graphics, but I was also building up my indie publishing house at the time, and I'm thinking, well, what bits of my job are giving me stress? What can I do with them? Or do I not like them and I don't want to do them anymore? Do I want to hand them off to someone? Can I automate things? It really was like that, taking stock of your life rather than saying, I hate all of it, I want to change everything, I want to like go move to the moon and start again. It was like, okay, let's really break it down into the tiny pieces and figure out, like, I like this bit, but I don't like this bit. So what can I do about this bit? They were really tiny steps, but that combined with just like holding my points whenever I was stressed, which I did a lot. I was always holding my points to begin with, because that was the only tool that I had that made a difference. But it really was just at the beginning, when you don't know where to start somewhere, because it's very easy to be paralyzed and just overwhelmed by all of it. So find a tool, find someone who can support you on the journey, and just start making those small steps. Really take stock of where you are in life, where you want to be, and start to make a little roadmap of how do I get there? How can I change this? It's not like I'm going to overhaul my diet, throw all my food out of my cupboard, and tomorrow I'm going to start eating really clean and baking from scratch and all this kind of stuff. It's like, how can I slowly change that? How can I change my breakfast, or how can I change my snacks over a week, and then slowly implement that over a longer period of time? So it can be really easy to just feel like, you know, that eat, pray, love moment where you're just gonna pack your bags and just go change everything. It's not that simple for everyone. So it really is saying it's okay to change things incrementally. In fact, it's sort of a way to lasting, longer change, permanent change, because you are doing it gently in a way that aligns with you and who you are.
It's not always super successful, burning everything to the ground and smashing all the bridges and nailing all the doors shut. It just doesn't necessarily work that effectively. But I would 1000% agree with you, and I know David would too, that when we make those little changes, those 1%, you know,
yes,
if anyone's read Atomic Habits, they know
that
it's the little,
that's where I got it from.
it's the little 1%ers that add up over time. Like, you know, you walk 10,000 steps a day over the course of the year, you've done 70 marathons. So, you know, it's just going, well, while the ads are on, what can I do? You know, how can I move my body? You know, like if I can't get to a gym or I don't have the funds to do so, what can I do? What little things?
Absolutely.
You know, and the little things really do stack over time.
I think we don't put as much consideration into the impact that the little things can do. We see people making these really big changes, and sometimes they've taken time to make those big changes, but actually we only see the highlight reel of, oh, they look like this and then suddenly they're like this, and we think they did it overnight. But actually there's so much in just being incremental and being really like dedicated and determined to and consistent with just keep trying, keep showing up. That was the thing that my holistic practitioner said to me when I'm sitting there thinking, what have I done? I can't do this. I'm never going to get any better. This is a nightmare. She's like, just keep showing up. Just come to today's session. Just book in a session for next week. Keep going and you will get there. But it's the keep going that can be the hardest part.
I think having a really supportive community, and I think David would agree with me, it's the best thing that we can do to help sustain us. when you think you're the island unto yourself and that nobody else understands what's going on, there's so many of us
Yes.
who are at the beginning, in the middle, you know, somewhere in amongst their own divine mess, that they have skills and tools and attributes that we can take from and learn and grow from too. So I think that's super duper important. But I will hand it over to my very good friend who looks very chilled and blissed out there.
Of course, it's like I told you, it's the divine feminine. So it's just like chill. It's like chill and prosper, you know, like you just enjoy the energy. And it's beautiful what Camilla said, you know, like in a very simple term, like take one step at a time. For me, it's like, if I have to paraphrase it, it's like take one step at a time, no matter how small your mind is telling you it is, but it's actually a huge step towards your spiritual awakening, towards your goal, whatever it is. And it's like being consistent, like you said about it. I know like we are getting short of time, but however, there's a question I wanted to ask you, Camilla. It's about like the goddess. I know that you have a list of goddess that you have shared with us, and there's a lot of them that you work with. However, like if someone is starting the journey, right, and they heard all about those goddesses, and like I was sharing in a few episodes before, like in Hinduism, we have millions of god, and we find it like sometimes hard to choose. Is there like a recommendation like for someone who is like really at the start of the journey and they're like so confused, like I don't know whom to connect with, and they get overwhelmed and then say, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything. So do you have like a recommendation for those people who feel like that they can connect with, or like a simple tip again?
Yes. I think obviously there is the beauty of it is there is so many divine feminine icons, goddesses, archetypes that we can tune into, because not every character will suit every person. It's about finding a story that you really resonate with, an energy you resonate with, and I think that's amazing that we have all that choice. But for me, I always, and it's not just because I started with Lilith, but I do recommend Lilith energy because she really does invite you to become the best version of yourself and really reclaim the power that you've lost anywhere and everywhere in space and time. I find that connecting with her, it's about, you know, standing for what you really believe in. If you look at her story, you know, biblically, she was Adam's first wife. She didn't want to be subservient to him, so she left the Garden of Eden to go make her own way in life. She was like, you know what, I want something more for myself. I wanted the equality, couldn't have it over there, so I'm gonna go make my own way. And I think that message for anyone who's sitting there thinking, I'm in pain, I'm stressed, I'm unhappy, her message just encourages you to go look within and say, what do I really want for myself? And that may be a question that you've never even asked of yourself. So to just tune into her energy, I just picked like a meditation on Insight Timer, set my intention that I was going to go connect with Lilith, just let the meditation run. And I just kept trying it. You know, initially I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know what to do. I have no idea how I start connecting with a goddess. So I was just like, I'm just going to set my intention, listen to a random meditation. There are some out there that, you know, you can go look up specifically to invoke a goddess, but at the time I didn't know that. So I just, any kind of meditation music, any talk down to get me into that state, and just kept inviting her in and saying, you know, please help me. This is how I feel, where do I start? And eventually she started to turn up in meditations, she'd come in dreams, I'd like journal questions to her and say, you know, this is how I feel, what would Lilith say to me? And I just would free write until it felt like the pen wasn't mine and the words weren't mine and it was someone else's wisdom coming through. That was kind of just the simple starting point. But I just find it doesn't matter where you go after Lilith, which goddesses from whichever mythologies you work with, she's a great starting point because of who she invites you to be, for yourself, not for anyone else, but be the best version of you, the happiest version, the most powerful version of you for you, which I think makes that a great starting point.
I feel it's just another amazing episode of the Divine Mess, right? Thank you so much, Camilla, like for sharing the divine feminine, to embody it, to share it with the world through your creativity, through your writing, how you're helping the world, how you're serving the world. It's just amazing how much knowledge you had. And it's completely, again, different from the first conversation that we had, because we didn't even touch base with that, because there was a part of your story that I was like keen for audience to understand. But as we know, like the universe takes us on different tangents where it's
It
meant
takes
to
us
be.
wherever we're meant to go, right?
So thank you so much. I know like you have chosen the Divine Mess to make like your comeback after a break. So we are very honored and blessed
Thank
to have
you.
you on this show, on the virtual couch. And I know like Tina energy is saying like she's loving it. She even lost her voice now. She's just bathing into and basking into this divine feminine energy. Just amazing how your story is really powerful. And our hope is like it's going to inspire not just women, but men as well to go into that
Definitely.
3 stages like you mentioned, like accept, stay in the mud, like be in the mud, like
Yes.
feel that stickiness, accept it, go through that healing, and then reclaim your power. I feel like that's your
It's a
part of your
universal
story.
message. I don't think it matters what gender you are, but going through those stages of emotional healing is universal. But also, there's still wisdom for us to gain, even if we are men. There's still wisdom from the divine feminine that we can get. As a woman, I can get wisdom from the divine masculine as well. There's still something that we can learn from each other. So I think, a lot of women probably will get a lot from this, but hopefully men will be able to sit there and say there's something here in this journey for me too. And even if it's that, all that is just the promise of you can heal if you start. If that's the only message they get from it, then it was totally worth it.
I think Tina can end on that note.
Well, I would love to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been the best fun conversation that we've had. And thank you for joining us on this auspicious occasion on our 60th episode. And
thank you for having me.
We will have all Camilla's details in the show notes. So if you're desperate to get your story onto paper, then perhaps reach out, because I'm quite sure she will be the person to be able to assist you with that. But until next week, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having your company next week on the Divine Couch for episode 61. Until then, take good care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.